If you're doing it alone, real estate can be very challenging and it can be very discouraging as well. If your spouse is not supportive of your real estate investing journey, the key is to really, honestly, when I started doing that, it changed everything. And that's something I learned in my late 30s. And I wish at 18, if I had been able to do that, that would have changed so many different parts of my life, just in terms of relationships, business, education, parenting. That I'm sure can help everybody if they're able to kind of learn that skill.
Joining us today is Danielle Unsworth. Danielle, can you tell us a little bit about your background in real estate and how you got started in this industry?
Of course. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. So I started just by accident, really. I was in my early 20s and I was looking for a place to live during my master's. And I didn't want to rent. So I was on this mission to find this property to buy. And I figured it out. I mean, at the time I was a full-time student, full-time waitress, just starting, my job with the federal government. But I figured it out. So I bought my first property. And then after that, I discovered the magical world of refinancing. And from there, I just, refinanced my property, bought another one. And it was pretty much slow and steady because I didn't know any other strategy. So it took me 10 years to buy 4 properties. And then after that, during COVID, my husband got laid off because he's an aircraft mechanic. And, there were no airplanes flying at the time. Yeah. So he was laid off. And that's when I just went full in with real estate investing. I, invested in myself, hired coaches, and I just pretty much took my real estate business and just scaled it, started doing joint venture partnerships, multifamily properties, and then started coaching myself, a couple of years later. And that's where I am now. So it's been a really incredible journey, to be honest. It started off very slow just because I didn't have that education and the commitment and the drive. So COVID really just forced me to, take action and grow my business. And now I just want to share everything that I've learned so that people can kind of, expedite their journey versus having to wait 10 years like I did, and just making an impact, especially for women who want to get started in investing, because I find sometimes it can be intimidating, and that's why I'm here.
I love that breakdown. And it tends to be that way with anything. When you start out, it's slow and steady, and then the momentum just grows over time. And in such short periods of time, it seems like you've done so much. But why real estate? So I get the first purchase, right? A place to live, that sort of thing. For most people, that just makes sense. But what sort of caused you to pursue it further? Even though you took the slow and steady approach, what made you think, hey, I wanna pursue investing, even be it on a passive level, in real estate as my method of growing my wealth?
That's a great question. To be honest, it's because I didn't really understand other methods of investing. At the time, I didn't really understand stocks that well. And I wasn't in the mindset to start my own business because at that time I was young, I was getting married, I just started my career, and real estate made sense to me. You buy a property, someone lives in it, they pay you rent, eventually it goes up in value, you can renovate to increase the value. So it just kind of made sense to me, and it was something I understood. It was easy to understand, and I was able to see the value of it so quickly. I mean, only a few years into buying real estate, I was able to see the value go up. And, and learning to manage tenants was another skill that I learned. And I'm a people person, so that came to me very naturally. And I also have, a degree in law and psychology. So reading documents, leases and things like that just came very naturally to me. So that was sort of why I was, led to real estate investing. It was just made sense to me. I understood it. I saw the results, and I just kept wanting to do it.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, it's sort of the skill sets were already there, and it just complemented that investment strategy, right? I love the fact that you have a lot more control over it as well versus buying a stock or something. But I have a question for you.
Mhm.
With regards to all of your investments, have you stuck to one specific strategy? What strategies have you used along your journey, and has that progressed at all?
Yes, it has changed quite a bit. So when I first started, I was buying single family homes because those were the properties that I knew and understood because, we live in them,
Yeah.
we rent it to a family, and it seemed pretty easy to manage as well. But then I started, talking to other people and then realizing, why am I sticking to just like one type of property? And I started venturing into, the multifamily space. So the 2 to 4 unit, I started looking at them. And then it just made sense to, go bigger because of economies of scale, right? And I wasn't afraid anymore to take on that challenge because I had 10 years under my belt managing single family homes. So to me, it just made sense to look at, commercial real estate 5 units and up so that I can maximize and leverage more of that capital. And that's pretty much how I just kind of very naturally transitioned from single family home to multifamily because I was at the point where I was really confident in my skill set. I had created the network I needed to be able to access those deals. And I had, the resources available to me to make it work. And so that's kind of how I transitioned. But at the beginning, I was looking at value add properties. So properties, at a discounted price and then renovating them, increase the value and then refinancing. In the last year or so, we've shifted our strategy to buy new builds instead, just because after a long period of time you just kind of get tired of managing like projects and things like that. So it's really nice to have a brand new 6 unit that you can rent out and that there's not going to be any issues for at least 15 years. You can demand higher rents right away because everything is brand new. It's like the first set of tenants. So you have tenants that are really excited to come in and be the first tenant in that location. And so we've shifted our strategy a bit because we also trying to be a bit more less hands-on, right? So when you're, renovating and managing projects, you have to be, more active in real estate. And because I also have a career, I really wanted to focus on strategies where I can, just build on to that equity and hire a property management company to do most of the heavy lifting. And then I get to just make decisions at the higher level. So that's kind of like where we are right now.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I think for a lot of investors, it's sort of figuring out what resources you have available at that time.
Mhm.
Whether you have a little bit more time on your hands and a little less capital, and
Mhm.
just leveraging that to its fullest in whichever part of the journey you're on. But I like that you broke that down. So you started out with the initial typical BRRRR strategy where you buy something undervalued,
Mhm.
fix it up, refinance. And because you've done this over an extended period of time, like 10 years, you've built up the principal pay down, built up the equity in terms of, the appreciation, and just that combination probably gave you enough of a starting point to kick off the multifamily journey and take it from there.
Mhm.
And it's a common thing that I'm seeing now is more so with on the multifamily side is the new builds versus just the typical value add on the multifamily side, and the numbers just making a lot more sense as well.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Now tell me if you could dive in, especially, and I love interviewing lady entrepreneurs and investors as well. I like the balance between the two, and I feel like any investor has their own set of unique challenges, but more so just having both sides, just for the audience out there, for the relatability factor and that sort of thing. Were there specific challenges that you initially faced when you first got started as an investor? Were there any that stood out for you?
Yes, definitely. So, being a woman and being a woman of color adds many challenges when you're starting a real estate business because people, sometimes they don't anticipate you being the decision maker in the business. Like my husband is an aircraft mechanic, he has his own career. So, I am the face of our real estate business, and he does a lot of the back end and the systems, et cetera. But I am the face of our business. So, a lot of times, when we were renovating our legal basement suite, for example, I would be there. And sometimes they're not looking to me for the final decision making, which is kind of, bothersome at times. But, I push through it and I accept it as, what it is. And then my greatest joy is when I get to make those decisions and they, realize that, oh my gosh, she knows what she's doing. So really, it's just showing up, being educated, being prepared so that you can change people's mindsets about, what a woman entrepreneur can look like. So that's number one. It's just the different like expectations as well. And then second, I think it's just balancing. If you're a mom, I think that creates a whole other set of challenges, and feeling guilty when you have to leave your children to go to like home showings and business meetings, etc. And so at the beginning, I tried to schedule all of my meetings after bedtime, sometimes early on the weekends. So trying to manage that was a bit challenging. And I'm at a point now where I can say, I've put in my time and I'm no longer doing like weekend showings or Zooms after 8. So, you do have to put in the time at the beginning, and then you can delegate, and then you can set your like boundaries. So there is a bit of time where you do have to make several sacrifices. But always, I always made sure that I gave my children enough time first, and then I handled business after, so that there was no tantrums or anything like that, right? So when their cups are filled first, you can go do whatever you want because now they've already had like enough of you, so they're good. So it's just like managing those different expectations as well. And then the third one is having a 9 to 5 at the same time, because a lot of times, especially like 5 years ago, you were seeing, on social media, people were saying, like quit your job, become a real estate investor full time. And I was never a big fan of that because, I mean, personally, I enjoy my job and I love my career. So it provides me the stability, and like I went to school, so I'm able to use whatever I learned as part of my day to day in my job as well. I really like that, challenge. And so to me, balancing the career and then running a business was also something I needed to be mindful of. So that's why I started delegating a lot of things. So as my business grew, I started hiring property managers, for example, and virtual assistants so that my business can continue while I'm working my, own job, right? So those are the three things I would say, being a woman of color, and then being a mom, and then having your 9 to 5 as well. But you can do it. I see a lot of people asking me, like, how do you do it all? It really comes down to having an excellent time management strategy, and also being able to let go of things being perfect and delegating it. Like a lot of times, like even my social media content, it goes out, it's not perfect, but it goes out anyways, because as long as it's done, I'm okay with it. And sometimes you have to be okay with things being done versus having to wait for it to be exactly how you would do it, right? Because no one's going to do it exactly the way you would do it, but you have to think big picture, and so that's how I've been able to delegate. I'm just accepting that it's done and it's good.
I completely relate to all of that. I was thinking while you were going through this, I was thinking, the biggest key is just being intentional with your time. I think that's a big skill that most of us have to kind of learn, because if you have your 9 to 5, especially as a parent, and I think way more so as a mother than as a dad, you need to be intentional with your time, because you need to make the most of your downtime so that you can give enough time to your kids, give enough time to your family, and give enough time to this period of like extreme growth in your life where you're trying to take off and build that momentum, where you have less leverage, where you have less people to delegate to, and you taking on a lot more yourself, and time is your most available resource at your disposal. For some people, I guess, if you have that high-end job and you already have the excess capital, you could just deploy a lot of that out. But even so, it comes with that sacrifice of being intentional with your time anyway. So I find that was a big skill.
Yes.
I mean, it's a skill for me that I'm constantly trying to hone in on, don't have like dead time, have all your time be intentional, have it be for family, have it be for business, for growth, for whatever that looks like. so that you can make the most of it. I love that. And then I like the fact that you highlighted that initial struggle, like being a lady of color, those are big struggles, and people not taking you seriously could cause you to go one of two directions. You could sort of just, retreat and decide, okay, well, I'm not going to pursue this. It's if other people don't think I can do it and no one takes me seriously, well, then maybe this isn't for me. Versus like lighting you up and having this be an extra driving factor, like, yeah, I'll show you, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, you'll come to see that you misjudge me, and I like that because there's always two sides of, when it comes to perspective, two sides of viewing things, and you can just go for it, or you can let it deter you from pursuing your goal. So I like the fact that you use that as a driving factor. But I think for parents, honestly, that's a big one. It's a big one. And when you're trying to get started, you're trying to build something, you have the 9 to 5 going, and there is that culture of like, quit your job. And for most people, I think the best route is probably still to keep your job going. It helps on the financing side. It helps on a whole bunch of factors.
Oh yeah.
So I love all of those challenges that you highlighted, because I think those are pretty common ones that most people go through.
I just want to highlight, like even with the time management, like you really have to like squeeze every minute, out of your time, because people will think, oh, I only have 45 minutes left. Like there's not enough time to do anything in that 45 minutes. I'll just sit here and watch TV. And so I remember a specific time where I had a podcast, and it was like maybe an hour before, and my kids wanted to get ice cream. And I remember looking at the time going, do we have enough time to go get ice cream? Or am I just going to sit here and let the time pass, right? And I was able to do it. I was like, okay, let's go, guys. Like, we'll go get ice cream. I was able to go to Dairy Queen, get them ice cream, sit at the park, have the ice cream, drive back home, and I still had 15 minutes to spare. But most people wouldn't go and just take that action, right? Like, let's just go. And so for me, it's really like I really squeeze the time out of every single minute, because you can do so much if you actually use it, strategically. And once I had, that time with my kids, and, they're, happy with their ice cream, I went and had my podcast interview, and they're downstairs now just watching TV or read, and it's good. So really, you have to make sure that the time that you're allocating to different things makes sense, and they serve a purpose. They're not just, like you said, like dead, wasted time. And I feel like that's what's helped me the most. Like if you ask my friends and family, they'll tell you, like, I really plan my time because I want to make sure the time is like, being maximized. And I think that's really the key. It's like, you got to squeeze that minute.
Yes.
Everything matters.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think one big difference that when I look at people that are like way ahead of me, and or people that are very successful versus people who aren't as successful, is their turnover time for getting things done is way shorter. You could give yourself 2 hours to do something, and you could give yourself 30 minutes to do something, and some people can get it done in a way shorter time. And sometimes you can actually, that thing that you would take 2 hours to do, you can get it done in 30 minutes, or you can get it done in 20 minutes. You'll actually just fill up the amount of time that you allocate to something. And I like the fact that you highlighted not being perfect, because when you chase perfection, that's when everything takes way longer to get done as well, Yes. And you're less efficient with your time. So the quicker you can get those things turned around, and the more stuff you get done in a day, the more momentum you build and the more progress you make. Now, I have a question for you. What is like 1 or 2 things that you do to kind of get the most of your time? Now, I know the first step, I think, is just being cognizant of it all. Is like, I need to squeeze out every bit of time, because I'm not getting that back. You get money back, you never get your time back. So what are some principles or some things that you try and put into practice so that it makes it easier for you to get the most of your time?
Yeah, so I try to do things like, for example, I don't respond to DMs like throughout the day. So to me, that's, you know what I mean? It's too sporadic. So I'll set a time, 30 minutes at 2:00 or 4:00, and I'll just answer all my DMs. So it's really like you're doing one task and you just pump it all out. You answer all your questions, and then that's it. You're done. Because I've done it the other way, which is probably what most people do, right? When they see a message, they respond. But when you do it that way, you really, like, whatever you were doing now has been interrupted. And so you have to go back to doing what were doing versus just do what you're supposed to do and then set that time aside, whether it's to check your emails, answer DMs, or create content. That's your time. So it's time blocking, essentially. So doing that really will maximize your. It's kind of like the Henry Ford model, right? Like you do one thing, everybody does one thing, and then but you're doing it for yourself. So at X time, you do all your emails, you do all your DMs, and then you just plan what is most important to you first. Like for me, it's time with the kids, it's my gym time, and then it's my marketing time, because for me, marketing is really important. And so I plug in all of those time slots, and then everything else just gets like filled out afterwards. And so to me, that is really helpful because I know whatever it is that are non-negotiables will get done regardless. And then I fill out my time with more of like the things that are just more for fun, or like they're just extra time. And sometimes I will plan like free time. So if I'm sitting in my hammock and reading my book, it's because that time was allocated for me to enjoy my backyard, for example, with the kids, right? So just plan your time and give yourself lots of time to plan it. Like you can't really, for example, I cannot do last minute lunches. My week is planned 2 weeks ahead, so I cannot do last minute lunches unless there's a cancellation. And sometimes my friends get upset, but I'm like, this is how I have to live because I'm really trying to maximize my time. And I like it. It keeps me organized, and I know exactly what's going to happen. And if I need to make changes, I have 2 weeks to do it. So it really works well for me.
I love that. I love that. Like I live and die by my calendar. If someone has to ask me, what are you doing like 2 days from now, 3 days from now? Oftentimes, like, I don't know, like I put it in my calendar and it's in there. So I don't have to mentally keep all of this in my head as well. Mm-hmm. That's one thing, but no, I like that. Like Brian Tracy says, eat that frog, like get those important things out of the way first, because it's also so easy to be busy throughout the day. There's so many things that you can be busy with, right? But making sure that you focus on the things that count first, and then allowing yourself the time to do all of the other stuff, I think is really important. And I like the fact that you highlighted that's family. It doesn't necessarily have to be like within my business, but that's something I try and keep on the top of my mind with most things that I'm doing, because there's so many things we can do. We can fill up our time so easily, but it's focusing on those meaningful things as well. And I love the fact that you also highlighted like batching your time with like-minded tasks. You know what I mean? So you're doing it all at once. Mm-hmm. I wish I could do this on a bigger scale, because I'm a realtor as well. That's like I can't like completely have my phone like turned off for like hours on end and then come back and do all my messages. But I try and do this in micro doses as well. It's like, like for the next 30 minutes or the next hour that I'm doing this, I'll try not to check my phone, try and keep, because it pulls you out of whatever you're doing and you become a lot less productive if you constantly reacting to notifications, right? So I love those. Exactly. There's a whole bunch of fantastic tips in that. Now, Danielle, you eventually got to the point where you decided, you know what, I've done a lot of this on my own. Mm-hmm. I think it's time where I may need some help to expedite the process and take things further. What was that mental shift for you? When did you decide that you kind of need a coach to take things to the next level?
So for coaching, what gave me that sort of like drive to hire a coach was I felt stuck. So I remember because I was listening to a podcast and there was a woman, the guest, she was doing exactly what I was trying to do, but I just couldn't do it myself. And it was to build a legal basement suite. So I was assessing the properties that we had, and then I was trying to figure out how can I maximize these properties? And one of our properties had an unfinished basement. And so I thought, I wonder if I could, turn that into a legal basement unit. And then this real estate investor, that was her strategy. So then I felt like, you know what? I don't know anybody else who's doing this in my circle. At that time, I really wasn't part of the community. And I thought, and I'm just gonna reach out to her, because she did say in her podcast that she does coaching. So that was really how I started, hiring coaches. And I've been working with coaches since then. I have one new coach a year, depending on my goal or whatever it is I'm trying to achieve. I'll find the coach that's already achieved that. And then I just, do everything they tell me to do pretty much. So that's pretty much how my coaching journey started, is because I felt stuck. And when my students come to me, it's usually the same feeling. It's when they feel like there's more and they want to do more, but they don't know anybody in their circle, and they feel like they need somebody to give them that accountability, and also to reassure them like what they're doing is not crazy, and that it is a successful strategy if they do it strategically. And so I think for me, that was pretty much like the turning point for my real estate business, is understanding that you do have to pay to expedite your journey. You have to pay to learn from other people's experiences and their mistakes so that you don't have to make them, right? And that's what I'm doing for my students. I'm, combining my years of trial and error plus all the years of coaching that I've received from other coaches. And I'm teaching that to my students so that they can avoid all those mistakes. Because if you're doing it alone, real estate can be very challenging, and it can be very discouraging as well, especially if you're the only one in your circle doing it. I have had a lot of women come up to me and they say, like my mom thinks I'm insane. Like, she thinks this is so risky. She thinks this is a scam. And I say, I'm really sorry that this is what you're facing. I've gone through it too. There were a lot of negativity when I started. And the key is to really talk to people who have done it, who want to do it. So that way you feel like you're normal and you're surrounded by people who have succeeded. So then it's like you're seeing the proof, right in front of you. It's not something that you saw on YouTube, for example. It's actually another person that's successful in what you're trying to do. I think that's really key. And sometimes people think, oh, you hire a coach and they coach you for that one, year or whatever. But really, when you work with a coach, you have access to like all of their resources and their network. It really opens up your world, because when you're someone's student, you're their student forever. Even after you're done coaching with them, there's always going to be that bond, and they're always going to want to see you succeed. Like a good coach, will always want to see you succeed. And so if you go back to them, they're still going to make sure that you're, in good hands, right? They're still going to refer you to people that might help you. And so I feel like having that connection really changed everything for me.
Oh, 100%. 100%. There's a lot to unpack there, actually.
Yeah, I know. But it's so important to find the right coach. It's so important to make sure that their communication style aligns with yours. There's so many factors into finding the right coach. You can't just work with anybody. You have to make sure that they're a good fit for you. Otherwise, you're going to, A, not take action. So you're just going to waste your money. B, you're not going to feel like you're being supported. You're going to feel even more discouraged. So finding the right coach is really, really key if you want to continue in your journey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I 100% agree, because if you're not taking any action, no matter how good the coach is, you're not getting any value from it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's honestly where I see the biggest value in paid education and coaching. Well, coaching for one is that relationship that you build in with someone, like you mentioned. That relationship goes beyond just the coaching itself, but it's the fact that you're expediting the process. And I think when people get started, you become a little hesitant on that, because it's like your capital's a finite resource. I mean, capital is always a finite resource, but it's more so a finite resource because you have a lot less of it to work with. And it's like, well, could I use this for something else versus paying for it unlocks so much more. And the upside to that is way, way more than what you pay for it if you use it correctly, right? Because the time that you're saving, the connections that you're making, the potential mistakes that you're preventing, all of those things make it well worth it. But I think the key ingredient, like you mentioned, is making sure you're choosing the right person to follow, to take advice from, and someone also I think that you could have a nice connection with, because I feel like you need to like your coach. You need to have somewhat of be on a similar wavelength, like really. And then also I find coaches also have some specialities in terms of their investment strategies and their methods that they follow. So potentially choosing someone who's actively doing or has done the investing strategy that you're looking to pursue as well, because then that's sort of their area of expertise. But I love it though. And I like the fact that you highlighted you constantly getting new coaches, because there's always room for growth in any aspect of your career, whether it's physical fitness side and getting a coach on that side of things to help with. Again, we all know how to eat healthy. We all know to work out, but there is that accountability factor, and there's a lot more that goes into it. So I love the fact that that's why I said there's a lot to unpack there, because there's so many benefits to it. But no, thanks for highlighting that. So you got to that point where you felt like, look, you needed that outside help. When did you get to the point, rather, where you felt like, you know what, I feel like I have enough and I want to start giving back. I want to start being the source of communication and support for a community and help people the way I was helped. What caused that? Because I mean, not everyone goes the coaching route as well, right?
That's right. Yes, yes. So for me, it was when I started, growing my business. I was sharing a lot of my journey on social media, and so people started messaging me because they had followed me from the beginning. Like when I first started, my coach, that was one of her instructions for me. She said, you got to share your journey, like be the light.
Yeah.
Like there are people out there that are too afraid to take that step, and you're doing it, and people will watch your journey and see you, succeed. And eventually they'll want to either support you, be part of your journey, learn from you, etc. So that's what I did. I started, I didn't know anything about YouTube at the time. I just created this channel. Every week I would talk about my renovations, and then people started messaging me. And, I started sharing more of my journey. I started sharing all of my tips, lessons learned. And it just became very organic that I would start coaching, because people would ask me, they're like, can you teach me how to build a legal basement suite? Or can you teach me how to buy my first rental property? And so that's how I started, very just like one or two students just asking me to help them. And then I was, very transparent about it. I said, listen, this is what I've done. This is what worked for me. This is what I think would work for you based on what you've shared with me. And I can only give you guidance if you tell me all of the facts, right? If I'm missing information, it's going to be different and it's going to be challenging for me to be able to guide you properly. So that's why there's that need for that trust between a coach and their student, because you have to be able to be transparent so that you can get the best guidance, right? It's not always just like a cookie cutter strategy. Okay, you're going to do this, this, this. There are important factors in people's lives that will affect those instructions and those strategies. So, being a coach, you kind of have to look at people's relationships too, right? What's going on with them, with their spouse? Are they both on the same page? If there's conflict there, it's going to be challenging for you to start, building a legal basement suite when you need, both signatures for the contracts and things like that. So we have to address other factors as well. So there's a lot of things that go into coaching and, helping people take that next step. So sometimes we have to step back and say, listen, we have to fix your finances first, create that foundation before we start buying and looking at properties. And so it can turn into other things instead of just buying like a rental property or building a legal suite. And so that's kind of how I started, just putting my content out there, sharing my lessons, sharing my mistakes, and then people reaching out and asking if I can help them. And so I've been doing it for two years now, and I love it. I love seeing my students succeed and having an impact, not just with them, but their families. And then they start sharing, everything they've learned to their friends and family. And so for me, it's the ripple effect of the impact that is the most fulfilling. And that's why I do what I do. And I think it's not a business that I intended on creating. It just kind of organically became one.
Love that. And I find a lot of the good coaches are the coaches that they don't do this because it's another source of income for them. In fact, they make a lot more money doing what they do and spending their time doing what they do, but they do this because of the benefits that they get from helping people and seeing the impact that they have on people. I like one thing that you mentioned is like you kind of need people to be open with you so that you can best guide them and
Yes. Yes.
know how to advise them. And I come across this a lot. Well, not a lot, but I've come across this a couple of times helping investors, and I've seen newer investors or certain investors being coached, like even when they're working with a realtor, like to potentially keep things from them. And I say, like, it's like going to the doctor and expecting your doctor to help you with your symptoms, but not telling them all of your symptoms, or help them with your problem and not adequately
Yes.
tell them, like, they can't properly diagnose you or help you.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I completely agree. You obviously need to find people that you trust, but then you need to be able to trust them enough to be completely open with them so that they can help you for your unique situation. Because there's no cookie cutter answer
Exactly.
or advice that you could give
No,
that applies for every
exactly.
situation or for every person. So I like the fact that you highlighted that, because I think a lot of people would get value from just being open and being a little bit vulnerable with their coaches or those people in their lives that are there to help them. Now, you mentioned, there's a variety of different things that people come to you with that you help them overcome. It's not just the technicalities of how do I
Mhm.
buy a property, renovate it, rehab, refinance, for example. It could be as simple as like getting their spouse on board with everything or fixing their financial
Yes.
situation.
Yeah.
The spouse one is one that I've heard a couple of times. What's some
Mhm.
typical things that people could maybe, like someone listening saying, "Hey, that's kind of me. What can I do? Is there anything small that I could try to like nudge my spouse and get them on board?" Because ultimately, having that support in your household makes a huge difference to your output and the progress that you're able to make trying to pursue something as challenging when you're initially trying to get started, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So, yes, for sure. If your spouse is, not supportive of your real estate investing journey, it will be very challenging for you to start a real estate investing business, right? Because you most likely will need both signatures for like the mortgages and things like that. And so, for me, I always start off with saying, like, have you had a conversation about why you want to get started in real estate investing? Like, maybe if your spouse understands why you're trying to do this, they'll be more supportive, or at least be open to hearing you out. Like, so for example, I have a couple, and the husband is all on board, but the wife is very like hesitant. So then I say, you do have two children. How about you explain it from your perspective in terms of like building that long-term wealth for your children? That's something that, another parent could understand. Like, I'm not doing this for me, or I'm trying to be, this landlord. I'm trying to create wealth, or at least secure some financial like stability in the future for our children.
Yeah.
So trying to understand the big long-term vision, I think, helps a lot of couples in terms of understanding why we're doing this in the first place, right? And then I always say, it's important for your spouse that's not supportive to go to some events with you to see what it's all about. Because if they're only hearing it from you, you just sound like this, like, person that doesn't really understand the whole concept, because you're just starting out. So they're not going to trust you because you're not the expert. So if you bring them along to a conference or a networking event, and they can actually see other real estate investors, then they're going to say, you know what? Maybe you're onto something here.
Yeah.
So just giving them that exposure will help a lot, right? And then also the third thing I say is like involve them in your decision making, even when it's small. Like, hey, I saw this property. What do you think of it? And then just talk about it, because then it becomes way less scary, because you're not buying this property, you're just talking about it. And then it's like almost like you're just giving them like little bits of information so that they get used to it, and then eventually they'll get more curious, they'll be more open-minded, and all of a sudden, now they're going to support you because they understand why you're doing it. So I think those three things are really key to just getting that conversation started. Because if you're both not on board, it's going to be very, very challenging. I mean, the spouse doesn't need to be actively involved with you, but they do need to support you. Because if they don't support you at all, you most likely won't be able to start. Because if you're married, like, you're going to be connected
Yeah.
regardless, right? So it's going to be very, very challenging.
That is fire. I love that. I really, really, really do. honestly. So even if I look between myself and my wife, like I've noticed, like we both just think differently. We comprehend things and
Yes.
understand things differently. And I'll be like, doesn't this make sense to you? And it just completely doesn't. And oftentimes that's the case in relationships. Like we don't all think the same. We don't all comprehend things the same. And if you don't understand a topic good enough, you can't explain it in simple terms. Oftentimes you can't break it down in a way that the other person might be able to actually understand it because you don't fully comprehend it yourself. So I love that. Bring them,
Exactly.
expose them to people who understand this on a higher level, who can explain it in a way that
Yes.
may actually be easier for them to comprehend firstly. And then that exposure so that you see other people are doing this and it becomes, this is more attainable firstly. If more people are
Yes.
doing it, well, then, okay, maybe we can as well. Maybe it's not just an anomaly or privileged people that get to do this and make this work. So I
Exactly.
love all of that. And then
Exactly.
including them in on the decisions. It's like, this is now a household mission. It's not, this is my thing that I'm doing. This is something that's being done
Exactly.
for us and for our household. So we all have our own part to play. You're not looking for someone who's a duplicate of you, who shares the same strengths as you, and you're both just doing the same thing. Because to be honest, there's not as much value in that versus two people who have separate strengths, have separate roles, balance each other out, and completely love it. That was fantastic. I love the way you break it down. You can see you're good at what you do, of course.
Thank you.
Now tell me, Danielle, like that's in a household level, getting that partnership. And what about taking that to the next level? So, someone, you and your husband, you got quite far on your own. Did you ever get to a point where you're like, well, beyond our partnership, maybe we need to bring other people in so that we can grow to an even further level, taking on a joint venture partner? Is that something you've ever experienced, and how did that go?
Yes. Okay. I will go back to that. I just want to add one thing before I
Yeah.
forget. When you're speaking to your spouse, this helped me a lot. Always remember how they understand information. So, for example, my husband is very detailed oriented and he loves numbers. So, when I have a deal come to me, I'm the opposite. I'm like
Yeah.
visionary. I just want to see, I want to see pictures. I want to see the big vision, the goals, the end goal. So, when I go to him for help or for his input, I will prepare the information in the way that he will receive it best. So I will literally print, and he likes paper format. So I cannot just email him something. So my husband is old school. So he needs printed paper and it cannot be double-sided. It's just not his thing. So I literally, when I have a deal and I want his input, I will print out the pro forma, single page printing with the image and then the strategy. Like I present it to him like a business presentation, right? Because he is my business
Yeah.
partner. And so honestly, when I started doing that, it changed everything. It made our communication so much better because I understood how he received information and how he processes information. So, if someone gave me just a whole bunch of data, I wouldn't even look at it, right? But for him, it's like, okay, I need to read the home inspection report. I need the projections. And then you need the strategy and what's the long. And then I present it in that way. And then he receives it so much better. So if you're speaking to your spouse, just remember, like, how do they like to receive communication? It doesn't mean how you communicate, it's how they receive their communication. So that is really key to making any partnership work, especially your spouse. So just something to be mindful of, right? Like some people are more statistical, some people are more visual. So that's a huge tip from me based on my own personal experience.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a fantastic point. And I see that firsthand. And I think with relationships, that's something you learn to understand over time. Ideally, is how the other person, takes things in so that you can present it in that manner. Now, this skill translates to joint venture partners as well, right? And so, how did that go for you?
So when we started looking for joint venture partnerships, it's when we had all this capital, like when we refinanced our homes because we had built so much equity over 10 years, we had all this capital, but we didn't have the deals. We couldn't find the deals because we were not at the level where we were able to get off market deals on apartment buildings. So we started looking for partners that were already doing that. So those are the partners that were more active than we were, and they were able to source multifamily properties. And then we decided, like, okay, well, if we have the capital and they're looking for investors and they're already actively doing it, so we started joining these types of joint ventures as the passive investor to be able to leverage not just our money, but other people's expertise.
Yes.
So I was able to do that and grow our portfolio. And my sister and I also started, doing a lot of joint ventures together because during COVID, we started, talking more about like what we're going to do. And then we realized we were both in real estate, but separately. So then we started we created a corporation together, and then now she's my business partner on a lot of the deals. So we started pooling our resources, which then made us, have even more capital to invest in more deals. So that's kind of how I started going to the joint venture route. And, I was able to scale more. And at the same time, I was able to learn the process, of being a passive investor. And so when I became the active investor, because once I started learning about how to coordinate and put together deals and managing multifamily properties, I became the active partner myself. And then I was able to leverage my expertise and grow my portfolio on that side. So then I became both active and passive depending on the deal type, because I wanted to make sure it still was aligned with my lifestyle. So that's how I started going into the joint venture route, like both as passive and active investor.
I love that. Yeah, oftentimes when I hear this, it's more like raising capital side of things and people partnering up for that reason. But it's nice to see the other side of the coin and be like, yeah, I had the capital, I needed access to the deals and potentially the expertise also moving into the multifamily space. So that's the route that I took. And I think for a lot of people trying to make that jump into the multifamily, that does make sense, actually. You know what I mean? They built up some of the capital. They wanna get access to the connections, the expertise, and just learning how it works in the multifamily, in the commercial space, So I like that perspective on things as well, because there's people out there listening that are like, but is there someone on the other side of this coin that actually would benefit partnering up with me? Well, actually there is, and those people are out there. Now, before we move on, I have one question on that. What did you do to ensure that this person was the right fit for you?
That is a great question. So we always look for active investors that have, more than, I would say, usually like at least 2-3 year experience in managing like a real estate portfolio in that specific area, in that specific strategy as well. And also references, like connecting with other investors that have worked with them before. And also being, if they're already part of a community that we have, paid to be in, usually it's a sign that they're more serious already because they've paid to be part of that community. So that also becomes sort of like the first level of vetting.
Yes.
And then we look at, their portfolio and their credentials. And we also want to make sure that our values are aligned. So we always, make sure we, know what their goals are, what's the long-term plans. And like you said, even with anything in life, right, you have to get along. You have to have the same values in order to do business together. And so for me, that was really important, that they have the experience, the expertise, and they have the same like work ethics and values.
That's another thing that I didn't highlight before, was when joining any coaching programs, any workshops, any masterminds, one of the bigger benefits as well, aside from the education that you get in, is all the relationships that you build in. Because oftentimes, especially when it comes to these paid services, there's some level of exclusivity where it's not just open to the general public. So the caliber of people that you're surrounding yourself with tend to be higher. They tend to be more like-minded people, and tend to be action takers for the most part. Now, of course, there are those people that will pay for something and then just expect it to magically work for them. But I find as you go higher and higher into higher paid courses and coaching and that sort of thing, you get higher caliber of people and connections that you build. But it's that factor of things. I think that's a fantastic point to make, is that already vets a couple of people out. And then the value side of things is super important. Just because someone has the resources you need doesn't necessarily mean they're a great fit for you and your values, and that you guys align, because it's a partnership, it's a marriage of some sort at the end of the day. And especially if it's long term and it's not just a fix and flip, you want to ensure that you guys are going to be able to see it through for the long haul without being at each other's throats or regretting this the whole way through, kind of thing. Fantastic. Yes, honestly, exactly. I feel like we could keep this going for another 2-3 hours at least. But for the sake of time, I want to move on to like one of my favorite parts of the show, and it's called Time Capsule. So let's imagine that you stumbled across a time machine. Now, of course, you can't change anything, which that would be great, but you can't change anything. You can only give or receive advice from your future or younger self. So first, let's go back to when you were 18 years old. What advice would you give your younger self with the knowledge that the experience and everything that you now have? Now, this can be financial, familial. Honestly, it could be a combination of everything. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Okay, so honestly, it's not financial, but the first thing I would say to my 18-year-old self is a skill that I learned recently, and it applies to everything, business, personal, and it's you do not need to react in that moment. So you can park whatever it is that you're having a conflict about, you park it, you process it, and you come back to it when you have a clear strategy on how you're going to proceed. And that's something I learned in my late 30s. And I wish at 18, if I had been able to do that, that would have changed so many different parts of my life, just in terms of like relationships, business, education, like parenting, anything really. Like just learn to regulate your emotions. You do not need to react at the time when the conflict arises, whether it's with a child, your spouse, a coworker. It's really be able to control, park, and then come back and then deal with it in a way that's, more productive. And now that, it's obviously it's a work in progress, but now since I've learned that skill set, it's just really changed everything. It's so much better. And that I'm sure, can help everybody if they're able to kind of learn that skill, is not react right away, just pause, park, and then come back. So that's number one. Number two is really at 18. Wait, do I just give one advice?
Well, I'm loving the first one, but I'm curious. Let's see the second one. We're already there now. We all want to hear this. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Let's do it. So number two, I would tell myself at 18 is is to invest early. I remember when I was 18 and people would say, you should invest for retirement. At 18, you don't care about retirement. You don't care about any of that stuff. And I just wish I had learned more about stocks, because when you're young, real estate is amazing too, but in order to buy real estate at 18, you have to have like capital from somebody, so it's not realistic. But at 18, if you're able to learn about stocks and invest even a small amount, by the time you're 40, like my age now, that would have been, just a completely different investing portfolio for me now, right? Because of compound interest. And that's something they teach you that in school, but not in a way that makes sense that you actually want to apply in real life. So number two, I would say like learning about stocks and finances in a way that you can maximize compound interest at 18. So those are like my two big tips.
I love that. Let's just start with that first one. I think that's a skill that most people, no matter their age, probably haven't mastered, and
it's hard. It's very hard.
It is hard. And I think if you want to think of living a life with like minimal regrets, that's probably one of the key things to take in and live by, because oftentimes you just being reactive, you say things, you do things that reflecting back on it, you kind of regret, maybe I shouldn't have done that, maybe I shouldn't have said that, maybe you get more perspective on the situation, more clarity, and you're able to make a more strategic decision on how to proceed. And but it's a skill. It's a skill. It's a
It
skill to work on.
is.
I love that. I've
It's
never heard that one before. I ask this question. I try and ask this all the like on each episode that I do. But wow, I love that one. I really,
it's
really
good.
do
Eh? It's
it.
a
It
good
is a good
one.
one, and I think any 18-year-old could use it. But honestly, anybody listening could probably use that, and at least use a reminder. I love
Yes.
that.
Because it helps me even with my
Yeah,
parenting,
yeah.
like getting the kids ready in the morning. Sometimes they'll do something and I'm like, no, no, I'm not gonna like I'm just not gonna discipline because this is just not the time because we're getting ready for school. But when they come home from school, I'll go back and say, hey, you know what happened this morning? You da 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 da. And you can do that with anything, your spouse, a business deal, like if you're having a negotiation and they're saying something, instead of reacting, you say, you know what, I'm going to come back to that later. I'm just going to process this. And then the next day, you have different options. You go back to the table and you say, hey, yesterday I didn't appreciate da 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 da, and this is what I'm thinking da da da. So it really it will change your life, but it takes a lot of skill and control, and you really need to practice. It's a work in
Yeah,
progress.
that's like self-control to like the highest level. But you're absolutely right,
Yes.
because most of what you say at that point when you're reacting, half of it gets missed and not even absorbed by the person that you're saying it to, because you're probably
Mhm.
not saying it in the best way. You're probably not saying it in the best tone. So lessons aren't learned
Yes.
when you're trying to teach your kids. And
Mhm.
relationships are destroyed because you can be a little more harsh and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
you kind of sometimes say things that can't be taken back or do things that can't be undone. So I love that. Honestly, that is fantastic. Like, I mean, the second point
Oh,
is great. And I
yes.
think most people can resonate with that. And I think you're right. Like, if it's painted in a more appealing way for 18-year-olds to actually grasp, understand, and apply, I think a lot
Yeah.
of people would be grateful for that, because yes, barrier of entry to just invest in some stocks when you're younger is like super low.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't need to be
Super low.
controlling
You can, yeah,
properties or portfolios or tenants or any of those things. You could just be
exactly.
taking a little portion of whatever money you have and putting that aside, and you'll thank yourself later. So
Yes.
both fantastic points.
Exactly.
Let's see on the flip side now, like looking ahead to your 80th birthday. What advice do you imagine your future self would offer you at your present age?
Oh my goodness. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. So I don't know what my 80-year-old self will tell me, but I'm going to guess my 80-year-old self will tell me to always live moment to moment, because at 80, I'm guessing I'll probably look back and wish that, I was present every single moment. So I actually try to do that now where if something starts to like give me anxiety and I start to worry about something, I'll just say, is that happening right now? No, it's not. So I'm just going to worry about what's going on right now, which is just me driving to work. And I'm just going to focus on that. So I think living, moment to moment, and also I think just appreciating myself really, like, when you're 80, you're going to look different. You would have gone through so many like life struggles, the goods, the bad, the ugly. And I think my future self will say, appreciate yourself, like appreciate your body, appreciate your ability to forgive yourself, to forgive others, and to love with just everything you have, really, because if you don't love, there really is no point to doing anything, right? We do everything for love, really. Like we make money so that we spend time with our loved ones, or we spend money on ourselves because we love ourselves. So really, I think that's what my future self would say. It's like,
I love that. I love
yeah.
that. So kind of live in the moment, appreciate appreciate everything, appreciate yourself, appreciate your present situation, the people around you, and of course love. Like, I love that. The first factor is, honestly, you're driving and you're stuck in traffic, like any little thing, and it can cause a lot of anxiety. But if you take it and you push it,
Yes.
if you push that timeline out far enough, it becomes irrelevant, and then it's like, doesn't really matter.
Yes.
I'm running a couple of minutes late
Yes.
tomorrow. Is this going to matter to me? Probably not. Someone says something or something happens. There's a little bit of a fire that you need to put out. Is this going to matter in a year from now? Probably not. So then, taking that level of pressure and anxiety out of situations just gives you a lot more satisfaction in life and a lot less anxiety for things that, you potentially can't even do anything about. And then living in the moment. I love that. I feel like that's just a good recipe for living a happy life and looking back when you're 80 years old and be like, I actually enjoyed this, So fantastic advice. Danielle, this has been amazing. I've honestly had a ton of fun. I know people listening out there are going to be like, okay, well, this Danielle's pretty cool. I wanna follow along. I wanna learn more from her. So what I will do is I'll be sure to put all your contact info in the description so people can just go ahead, follow along on your journey. I think you're definitely an asset for everyone out there looking to pave some sort of way to a better future for themselves. So I encourage everyone to go along, follow Danielle. She's you heard it. One of her priorities is to put content out there and help others. So I definitely think they can get value from you. So Danielle, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out and providing us with all this value. I've had a ton of fun.
Thank you so much. It was a blast. I'm so happy we had this connection.
Thank you for tuning in to the Wealth Through Real Estate Show. If you're interested in learning the best investment strategy type for you, then you definitely want to check out my interview with Kyle Pierce. This is your host, Alray Noble, signing off.